makes a difference. Hey, Jackie, can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. And Sandy, you're able to hear us okay?
Yes. Hello.
That's what I was gonna grab.
How's your Monday going?
It's going. How about yours?
Yeah, wasn't too bad.
Yeah. I say that about a Monday. It's a good Monday.
Sure went by this morning. I mean, the day part went by so fast.
Did it?
Apparently I had a data breach on my main password I use on like all my non-important accounts,
no.
you know? And they keep telling me I need to go change 24 passwords, but it's like, I don't care. They can have it if they want, you know?
No secrets there, huh?
No,
This has some different stuff. I'll be referencing it just like the minutes stuff.
Okay.
So, anyways.
Thanks, Sean.
And then
unmute.
Yes, we'll call the meeting to order. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One of the letters to the editor instructed us on how to say the Pledge of Allegiance in Wilson Tribune the other day.
Oh,
One nation, no comma.
No comma. that was Jeannie Wasco would always hammer on that.
Oh,
I
my.
remember that.
No comma, no comma.
Really?
I remember.
Yeah.
Every time I stand up and say it,
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we have no visitors on the agenda, but we do have Amy here to speak during the public comment time. Thanks for coming.
you bet.
And we're just going to turn it over to you right
Okay.
now.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, first of all, before we start, I just want to make sure, sound check with Sandy, who's online. Sandy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And it's not here yet?
Nope.
Okay,
Haven't seen
so
it.
we have the 4 board members right now.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so I understand that the board talked a little bit about schedule and school day length at the last meeting. I didn't participate in that, so I'm not sure what the discussion was, but following the survey that was sent out, I wanted to just share a little bit about my thoughts and, you know, some of our personal situation, which is definitely extreme case, you know, as far as school day length goes. When Leah started kindergarten, she was getting on the bus just a little before 7 and got off probably a little bit after 4 o'clock. And as a kindergartner, it's a pretty long day. I mean, she was able to manage it pretty well, I think. But as time has progressed, now we're in the 4th grade. We're now getting on the bus at 6:40 and getting off at 4:20. So we're close to 10 hours a day, you know, to attend school. I think that, you know, logistically, we're handling it decently in school itself, but the evenings are really a challenge for the kids. I mean, they're just really tired. The time that we're gone is similar to if you had a student in Nestforce traveling to Lewiston to attend school in Lewiston. That's the kind of day length that we're talking about. So as we look at things like the school calendar and school day length, to me, the low-hanging fruit is not the school day length in of itself, but actually the length of the bus route. We're on the bus about 2.5 hours a day, which is just a long time, you know, for the kids. So yeah, you know, Sean's working on that to try to see what he can do to reduce that total length. But we don't have too much more we can give, you know, when we get home at 4:20, it's like, man, it's such a tight transition to get from off the bus, you know, rolled into homework, into dinner, and then of course we need an earlier bedtime just so we can logistically get up, you know, in the morning again. So if we can't do anything about the bus route length, I would really appreciate a look at shortening the day length at school, you know, and extending your calendar if you need to fit in your minutes. I know that's not ideal for everyone, but it would sure make a difference for our family. Again, my preference would be to focus on the bus route, but you know, I know that we're all limited in what our options are there too. So anyway, I appreciate your time. And I know you guys are working hard to make everything work as best you can.
thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Should have probably introduced I mean, Amy and I have had a lot of conversations, kind of very similar to what she said and kind of addressing some of those concerns. And I think, you know, as we progress through the meeting and get to the calendar discussion and maybe talk about the overall number of hours in the day, and then also just more ideas for bus driving or some other stuff like that.
I just wanted to tell you, I appreciate your commitment to our schools. So you didn't say, oh, the heck with it, let's homeschool them, you know? So, and the fact that you're an outlier, quote, I mean, literally, way out there lying,
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not important.
Yeah.
So thank you
Absolutely.
very much. Okay, now, no more public comment, so we're gonna move on with the consent agenda, and we will be visiting your topic tonight.
Yeah.
You have in your packet the board minutes and a printed copy we have here. Marcy's probably got the printed copy. District financial reports, bills, and associated student body financial reports. Is there any comments or questions on any of the reports? If there's not, we could, if there's no other comments or questions, we can move on with, or entertain a motion for consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Polly.
Okay, Ollie seconded, Carrie made the motion. I forgot my little
I
asking
know, I
about,
forgot to follow.
Yeah. For significant people hearing, they can find out who we are. Anyway, so we have a motion on the table. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Is anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Okay, then that passes. Next up is we have some bids for the parking lot and paving.
So we haven't put any bids out yet, probably because of our conversation about busing. I happen to have Amy's ear, so I visited with her about our parking lot after last board meeting. She put me in contact with John Watson from JUB. John came out during our last PD, was able to make it out and kind of took a walk around the parking lot with me. We talked about a few things, specifically about the water that's coming out. He indicated that really, like, I mean, to fully know what's going on down there, you're going to have to, completely dig down there. But just from my description to him of how, when it's wet, he felt that it was likely not like a significant steady stream, and very likely could be from cracks kind of in the upper part where the bus drives that are then leaking water underneath and then out in that direction. He's advised me a little bit on developing a bid to put out, but then, he expressed that he does some of this work before and they have some stuff. So I've asked him to help develop the bid for us, working on some things like, if construction fabric is necessary or not, and writing that in as an add-on to the bid and the price for it. And so he got tied up last week, didn't quite get it done for the board to see tonight. But what I would suggest, if the board is willing to solicit bids, that if the board approves that, then I can finish my conversations with John and then get something out as soon as possible regarding the parking lot. The board at that point, it's a small enough bid that we would be soliciting to 3 companies. So I need to reach out to 3 companies to get bids. When the board gets those bids back, we would open them. By law, you would have to accept the lowest bid or reject all of the bids and start over again. So I think the board is still protected in that it's not like there's nothing that would engage you in it at this point. But if the board agreed to go ahead and go out and solicit bids for replacing the parking lot, then I can finalize that language, get something out, and have something to you at the next board meeting.
Do we have to have 3 bids?
We have to solicit 3
We
bids.
don't have to have 3 bids.
Correct.
Okay, so when we need a motion then to go forward with bids on this. Or discussion first, I guess. I think that sounds like a reasonable first step.
Mhm.
Sounds good. So will we be hiring John as a consultant then, or JB Engineering as a consultant?
Correct, yeah. And that's not a bidding process because that amount is not going to come to $50,000, I hope. So that is just, entering into an agreement with him as a consultant to help me develop this bid language.
And can we combine those in one motion?
I think, I don't think it would take a board motion for me to.
Oh, not for John.
Yep.
Okay. So we just need to talk about the idea of having him for a consultant, and then, but primarily about then moving ahead with the bid process. Anybody have any comments about that? Okay, and then entertain a motion then to initiate the soliciting three bids for the parking lot.
I move to, for Sean to solicit 3 bids for the school parking lot improvement project.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Carrie seconds it.
Carrie seconds. Thank you.
Like,
Discussion. Do you have any idea who we're gonna get to do this?
When we kind of just put out for initial estimates, we talked to both Poe and Herco. So we've already had conversations with 2 asphalt companies about it. I would anticipate those are local companies and gauge their interest.
All right, any other discussion on the motion?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will the city be responsible for any of it? I mean, I know at one time they had talked about putting in a catch basin to help with the water problem. Has anyone talked to them about it?
I have not visited with the city about that. I mean, all of the pavement that we're talking about would be on our property, but I do see what you're saying, like where the 2 intersect. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Because I mean, obviously, the pavement's just going to give out again if the problem isn't fixed. I
Yeah.
know the city had worked on it once before because it was some kind of a sinkhole type problem.
Yeah, the city did come in when it was failing before, and we kind of just patched. They patched over the top of it for us. That was probably a few years ago, and then of course it's just crumbled back away. I suppose it depends, and John kind of warned me, Sandy. Obviously you can kind of write a bid, and then if you do start digging, you might have to make an adjustment. But he did feel from the description anyways, and he was very careful to say that it's not a guarantee. But from the description of the way that how long it would leak or weep, I guess maybe is a better word, that it could be very likely just kind of micro cracking or cracking up above that's leading to some of that. Not a consistent kind of like a spring type situation or something like that.
Understood.
I guess Sandy has a point though, that where we go with the water, like if we put either a dry well, I don't know what they all do, but or to drain it out, then the city might be involved in, or at least interested in what we do. So our consultant could consult with them.
Sure. Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it's like an overflow of water. I mean, like, it seems like it's a clear flow.
Right.
Right? And I mean, I don't know if you guys ever went on already in the last 2 years.
I've heard about it.
And so they were just patching it. They were just patching
Call that the wagon
after
trail out
a
there.
couple,
Yeah.
after a couple weeks, it would just crumble. But
Right.
I mean, if we're gonna resurface the whole thing,
Yeah.
I don't anticipate something.
Yeah, and this would be, he felt very comfortable. I mean, when we kind of sought an estimate from Herco, I mean, you're digging down 8 inches of stuff and hauling it off. That was actually part of their estimate. So you're restarting with a good base. The question is, talking to him, is like when you get down to that 8 and maybe you do see that there's something, I might not even be using the right hydrological that's happening there, then there could potentially be more, but he also talked about, writing in there that you could use like drain tile running horizontally across the parking lot. Or there
Or
would be
just
some
kinda
other,
Spread it out in a drain field essentially.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
should fix it without.
Is
But
Amy still there?
Amy's here.
Does she have any ideas on that?
So I guess if I had a thought, it would just be, I think John will give pretty good advice as far as, what needs to be addressed and maybe doesn't. He's seen a lot of this type of work. I don't know how strongly he talked about digging down. I know that at least a lot of clients I've worked with are hesitant to dig down and see what's beneath because of the logistics associated with that. But the only thing I can say is I would really try to press him and make sure you understand how badly he thinks you should dig down and check it out, because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to necessarily, what could I say? Take that as a, he might be inclined to say, I think this could be it, but still, I think you should be digging down.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, I'm not being very clear in how I'm conveying that, but I think that's important. And, I guess I would get Craig up here and, talk with him and
About the city
Craig and
piece.
John and probably Tim all together in a group and visit about things.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Sure.
Thank you, Sandy. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote. Anybody opposed to the motion? Anybody want to abstain from the motion? Then the motion passes unanimous. Thank you. And next up is the school calendar. Wow, do we have a lot of paperwork here? Where do we start?
So let me start by just kind of reviewing the calendar itself. We made a few adjustments after looking at it. As always with the calendar, we're doing this, in advance of the school year starting. It's February now. This will be kicking off in August. So as much, there's been other times when a calendar's changed in that interim. This gives us a good start and really does kind of start to lay things out. But the current school calendar, we had to make an adjustment. The fair actually was adjusted to a later date, a later weekend. Oh,
I was just looking at it. Yeah, I did.
I see that now. I've seen it. So that's, no worries. No worries. So that's the fair adjustment is now, it's this next week. So the 30th and the 1st of October will be the Lewis County Fair dates. And the dates where we have Monday in-service day and the start of preschool will be the 4th and the 5th. No, actually, I don't think, did we change preschool on that one? Okay. So 4th and the 5th.
Did you want it changed?
Well, I don't think I indicated to you. I would actually propose that we keep the start date of preschool the same, the 28th. So but with this, the 4th would become the in-service day. The days off for the fair would be the 30th and the 1st, and the preschool would stay the same. So that was one adjustment to the calendar. It has the first day of school for the high school would be the 31st of August. First day of school for the elementary would be the 1st of September still. And exit from school would be June 3rd. And graduation would still fall on Memorial Day weekend on that Friday of Memorial Day weekend. So as a reminder for part of the discussion, we, because of our semester switch this year, like I was talking to Amy at the beginning before the meeting started, it allowed us to kind of redistribute our professional development days a little bit more evenly throughout the year. The last several years, we've not been able to kind of squeeze in PD much in before the Christmas break, but now it allowed us to put another one here in October. And then basically one a month, January, February, March, April, for professional development days. I will, I know sometimes, and it came out a little bit in the survey that we sent out too, that I just think it's my job as a superintendent to communicate the importance of professional development days for my staff, for my principal. It is not, we don't, on these professional development days, this isn't like, oh, we're tired of kids, so we're gonna take a nap and then get a mani-pedi in the afternoon and make everybody feel good. These are incredibly valuable days to the staff in mid-year. They are working on things like curriculum decisions. They are working on things like looking at testing data as a team or a group of teachers. They are working on required trainings, like, for example, like whether it's, sexual harassment training or Title IX compliance training, or we do van, safety if they're driving the vans. So there's other trainings that they can use these days for. We're using it for Dr. Christina Brinkerhoff is doing training on ACEs and trauma-informed instruction. Our staff is also doing a book study. So I guess, and I know I'm probably just speaking to the choir with the board, but since it is a public meeting, I just want to advocate for the fact. I know there are some other school districts around that where board members have said like, well, they don't need those days. They just, if we're paying them just to be with kids. But part of being professional is, being able to go to trainings, get trainings at the school, and improve their craft as well. So as much as I like to have them with kids as much as possible, I think we do emphasize that. I think it's important that we have these days. And also spreading them throughout the year so that it's not just, well, you get 4 days at the beginning of the year and 3 days after, but finding time to build that in. We also do use one of those professional development days for our continuous improvement planning, which got canceled last year. But so that is the calendar as it stands. Now there's kind of the next thing to talk about, I think, is just that generally that survey. And I guess in that part of the conversation, I don't want to drive it. I would be interested as a superintendent and just if the board wanted to kind of discuss maybe what they saw or if there were any kind of takeaways from that. And then at your guys' discretion, if you've done that and feel good about that, then I can visit with you a little bit about some of the numbers that I had Marcy put together for me for some ideas about the school day length. And then we can talk more in depth about that too.
Okay. Well, thank you for showing us the calendar. And I will say historically, the board has supported education, collaboration and education of our teachers strongly. Yep. Because it's always resulted in improved education for the students. If it was just happy time, we would support it, but it's not. Okay, so I can't remember, was the survey in the drive or was it in the email? Okay. I tell you, I have such a hard time getting around through all this.
Wait,
There it
Wasn't
is.
it uploaded in the drive? though?
I think I emailed it to
I
you
have it emailed.
last week.
Okay,
Could be in the drive.
They're all over.
That's for the superintendent evaluation, though,
Oh, yeah,
not
yeah,
for
never
the,
mind.
yeah.
okay, so now we'll turn our attention to the survey about primarily length, I guess.
As far as comments go, I think the most common thing was just kind of about not going later in the day.
Yeah,
We had said that
right.
at the last
Yep.
meeting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It seemed like most people were, if like we were gonna do anything, it was gonna be to start a little bit later.
Yep.
Nobody was really interested in going longer into the school year.
Yeah, there really wasn't any interest in extending the calendar itself to add extra days.
Unless it was like a couple, but I don't know what that would do.
Yeah.
At least one person thought that we should cut into our spring break or Christmas
Yeah.
break. I did not like that idea.
No. And we've had some Christmas breaks in the past that went, I mean, a lot of times it had to do with when Christmas and New Year's was. that ended up being like a week and a half. And those are not, I mean, from all of my experience, those are not very popular things. People like a 2-week break at Christmas.
I mean, it seemed like on the survey, it was pretty popular to start just a little bit later and maybe just go like a touch later.
Mhm.
Was that the most popular option?
As long as it didn't add days to the calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges, is, you know, if you're going to take minutes. Now, certainly, so I guess I can, if you're okay, and as you're looking at it, there's the 3 documents in front of you, and Amy has one too, just to kind of walk you through what Marcy put together for me. So you'll notice there's one without a heading in red. Oh, yeah.
Does Sandy have these?
You know, I don't think she does.
Could,
Have what?
Could you
Email
scan her?
I can email them to her.
Sorry. Good question.
So Sandy, what we're gonna look at next is 3 documents that are like, well, they're different comparisons of shortening our day by what? 20 minutes and one by 30 minutes. And Marcy's gonna email them to you.
Did she already have it on Drive?
I don't think it was.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I'll start talking, Sandy, and you can also let me know offline if you have any kind of questions about it, but hopefully I can describe it because it's awful to kind of look at, but
Really, I mean, I've got the papers and I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So.
So the first one doesn't have a heading, and then there's one that says 20 minutes reduction and 30 minutes reduction in red. So I'll just kind of start with the first one to walk through it. So as you can see, there are multiple rules by the state for the number of instructional hours that a student needs in a year, broken apart by grade level. Kindergarten is the kind of the most extreme different because in the state of Idaho, you only have to do half-time kindergarten. So the minimum instructional hours for a kindergartner is 450 hours of instructional time. That's seat time. When we do this calculation at our school, it does not include lunch break, lunch times. It does not include recess times. So when they're out playing on recess, and it does not include passing times for the high school. So the 3 minutes between periods, we have to subtract out. This is actually, you know, time in your seat. So just using kindergarten as an example, Marcy has the number of minutes that we would have in a regularly scheduled day. That is starting at 8 o'clock for us and ending at 3:10 and subtracting out those things that I described to you. Is there anything else? It's recess and lunch break for the elementary. So it's 339 minutes or 5 hours and 39 minutes. And then it's simple arithmetic after that. You're just taking that number of hours in a day times the number of days that we do that. And then we also adjust for our early release, which we only have 4 on our calendar. And then you can, by statute, add in professional development as well. They have a maximum amount of professional development that you see there is the 11 hours. As long as we go over that 11, which we do, that's, 39 and a half basically is what we have. So adding all those things up, you get your instructional hours, that 537 in the case of kindergarten. And then, just subtracting what the state minimum is, you get how many hours we're over. So just as a quick calculation, and Sandy, so this is just the number of days basically that we're over. If you were to take these numbers, in the kindergarten, we have just over 15 days of that is above and beyond the state minimum. So that's 15 days for kindergarten. In grades 1-3, we are approximately slightly more than 24 days over. So if you look at that number of over hours divided by the number of minutes in a regular day, or hours in a regular day, you have about 24 additional days. Going back to kindergarten for a second. So 15 days, we meet 3 times a week. That would mean kindergarten's over by about 5 weeks of instruction. I want to make sure I say that I don't think the state minimum is an appropriate level for us here. So I'm not saying it that we need to cut 15 days of kindergarten. I'm just saying that's where we're at right now. Grades 4 through 6 is about 15 more. It's more than 15 days. Grades 7 through 8 were more than 26 days over. Grades 9 through 11 were nearly 12, not quite 12. And then grade 12 were almost 10 days over. What that means in terms of like cancellations is if we have a snow day or a COVID day or something else, or a leak in the pipes or the electricity's off and we have to cancel school, I still have to bring that to you for the cancellation. The board still has to approve it, but we don't have to make up those days because we're still going to meet the state requirement. If we were to ever, the lowest number there is the 9.86 for the seniors. If we were to have 10 days of canceled school this year, then we would have to either make up those days or petition the State Department of Education to waive the rule for some reason. They've done that in the past for schools, like when they had those big snowstorms down in Weiser and the buildings were collapsing, they waived some of those days and said you don't have to meet the requirement. But basically you'd have to make them up. So you want a little bit of cushion. It's that the whole thing, you know, we used to be told, well, you know, the superintendent can only cancel like 3 days and then we're going to have to go to school. Well, really, with the current schedule we have right now, it's 10 basically before I would have to start adding more days to the calendar. I think it's a good thing to have some cushion, obviously, in that. So with that, then you can see the calculations for the other two. There's the 20-minute reduction, which as you go through there, you'll see that we still end up over in every category. But you're getting down to, remember the number that's displayed on here is hours, not days. So I was just talking in terms of days. A day length for the high school is about 60 minutes because we don't have like, or 6 hours, excuse me, because we don't have things like recess. The day length for the elementary shows up as slightly less than that. But our tight point, if we were to reduce the schedule by 20 minutes or the day by 20 minutes, would be our seniors who would be down to just 10 hours over the minimum. 10 hours over the minimum would be on the second snow day. You'd have to reschedule something for the seniors. We kind of got to the 20-minute thing when I look back through the history is that we actually added, and why we have an excessive amount of hours right now, or kind of above and beyond probably most schools. When there was a push in the secondary, this is before me, to add in the silent sustained reading period, which I think has had an immense impact on our ELA scores and on our SAT scores in the language arts. Basically, from my understanding, is there was kind of a handshake agreement that will still keep the times when the teachers have to show up and leave the same. And inside that, we just stretched out more contact time with the students so that we could fit that 20-minute period in. When that happened, it also stretched things out for the elementary because we're trying to run on the same bus schedule. And all of a sudden, you know, we got this boost and we're over days by quite a bit. So the 20-minute reduction would get us back to that. Theoretically, you would not have to add any days to the school calendar with a 20-minute reduction in the day length. You would lose, I mean, a set amount of hours that you can tell by comparing the two. Then also, just for comparison, a half-hour reduction, which in my mind would be kind of back to what, and Amy might remember better than me about our school day, but I think we were just 8:20 to 3 o'clock, but maybe it was, yeah, that's what I remember too. So if we were go back to something like an 8:20 to 3 o'clock, you can see that we're still over in terms of kindergarten, you know, significant enough. That's 40 hours. You're probably close to 8 days over in kindergarten when you convert it to days. And then as low as in the high school, where we're actually, those numbers in brackets were deficient. And we would have to look for days to add to the senior and the high school calendar to kind of meet the state minimum requirement number of hours. So that's just, that is kind of to meet the state minimum requirements for hours of instruction. The other piece there in yellow hasn't been adjusted. It's actually the same on each piece. It wasn't what I asked Marcy to do, and it just stayed that way. But that is the state minimum requirement in the high school, that in order to assign a credit to a class, a high school credit to a class, we have to have 60 hours of seat time for a credit. And so we would just need to be able to maintain that. Even at the lowest, even with a 30-minute reduction though, we would still be able to, I just did my calculations, we'd have about 67.9 hours per class period. And so we'd still be able to maintain that. The credits wouldn't be an issue. Do you have any questions about that?
Well, I have a comment. I'm sure glad I'm not trying to do this on 4 days a week.
Yeah. I mean, it is in Idaho is a little different. You know, some states, you just see how, the state will make some rule and then everybody kind of adjusts to it. Some states are on a per day basis. And that's where, like Washington State is. And that's where you'll see, like, in order to count it as a day, they have to run to a certain time. And then they can release, and according to the state of Washington, they can call it a full day. It doesn't even matter. And so Idaho is not on a per day system, which has led to, it's one of the reasons why that Idaho has like the highest number of schools that are on a 4-day week, is because by simply lengthening the day, you can add the minutes in that you need. Now, I am not a proponent of a 4-day week. I don't think it's best for kids educationally to just be here 4 days. I taught in a 4-day week over at Highland. I kind of liked it as an employee, as a staff member. I don't think it's what's best for kids.
So school right now is 8 to, is it 8:10?
School is 8 o'clock to 3:10.
3:10. Okay.
If we were to reduce, if the board was to decide to reduce it by 20 minutes, my recommendation would be to do it in the morning portion of it. So we would keep the end time at 3:10 and start at 8:20. The other option would be to keep the start time of 8 and then end it. Well, you could take the 20 minutes off that at 2:50.
You can split the difference.
Or you could split the difference. Or, and honestly, these are just, you could have an infinite number of sheets with whatever minutes you wanted to put in. This just kind of gives a general idea. There's other things to think about when you adjust the schedule. So if we were to shift if we were to take 20 minutes out of the day in the high school and the junior high, we're gonna have to find where to take those 20 minutes and maintaining SSR. That likely would come from taking 2 or 3 minutes out of every class length, which probably wouldn't impact the instruction too much for the high school. I mean, you're still meeting the same number of times. So you're going to take 2 or 3 minutes out. What that does, though, is it shifts when your lunch ends up. So all of a sudden, if you're still starting at 8 and now you just shorten every period, all of a sudden you're shoving into when we have our elementary lunch, because we share that cafeteria resource. So that's where, starting at an 8:20, you're kind of giving yourself a little bump head start, and then slowly regressing back. You'd actually be, the 20, you'd be 8 minutes later, the lunch would be, rather than sliding into when the elementary is. Or making the elementary lunch even earlier. It's already a relatively early lunch. I mean, kids are lining up to eat lunch at about 11 o'clock.
I know one of the comments, a couple things on there was when they talked about, parents who are working and they have to be at work at 8 generally, so they're probably have to leave early, and then they were talking about providing some sort of before school program. I think that's another issue, but I mean, it would be a way to kind of ease that. worry
Yeah.
from parents.
Yeah. So you're saying if we started a little bit later at like 8:20 to
Yeah.
provide some,
Or maybe able to come to school. I know lots of kids will come and eat breakfast and
Yeah.
and things like that, so.
yeah, even right now, I mean, we kind of have to like clamp a little bit on when kids can be here because we do have kids, here at, well, it used to be 7:30. Now we've asked kids to be here at 7:45. Some of it is, coverage of, having a paraprofessional or a teacher to cover like recess, so you don't have like a fist fight or somebody skins their knee bad. Also just kind of the breakfast room too as well. So yeah, it could be a shift and it could be something that we look at as far as, having a staff member here, even or maybe they still just stay here at 7:45, they can be here. But
Well, and if they're gonna be here that early, like maybe that 15, 20 minutes could be them working on homework or reading or
Right.
something. I don't know,
Yep.
something, and then up until they can go outside.
and they'd be sent outside after that, Yeah. So then to just kind of continue the conversation about, Marcy and I visited again today. Marcy had an idea about, and I know I visited with Amy about it too, about running perhaps, an elementary or excuse me, an early morning 4th route, perhaps using Tim if we can't find somebody else to do it. And then maybe not having him do the afternoon route or going back to 3. Our afternoon routes are generally shorter. You have kind of a,
Honestly, it's the afternoon that's killing me.
is it the,
I can deal with 6:40, but when they get off at 4:20,
Yeah.
it's tough.
right. Yeah. So maybe looking at the afternoon route instead to do the 4, something to kind of balance. We do have,
Don't pick anything.
yeah, yeah. Some mom who knows. Looking at, some way to have, one thing about that's tough with Tim running it in the morning is that you do have snow and you have, other things in the winter that need to be addressed kind of first thing in the morning. Also, something to consider, and is that we don't have a substitute. So you have to have a plan. If right now, Tim, we had a substitute, things were working really well. She found a full-time employment somewhere else and is gone. So at this point, if one bus driver wants to, take a vacation or is sick or anything else, then Tim is driving that route. And so logistically for families, it does kind of become a challenge when you're like, well, pickup time is this time and drop off time is this time. And then, well, we have one bus driver sick, maybe it's not even your route, but we're going to have to shift back to our 3 route setup. So that's a challenge. I don't know. And maybe there's enough variability, and Amy could probably answer this too. Like maybe it's not always the same time anyways as different kids ride. And so families would be used to that, and that might not be that big of a deal.
I found it to be I found it to be somewhat variable until this year. This year it's been clockwork.
Right
It's
on.
been,
Yeah.
6:40 to 4:20.
Yeah. Just right on. And some of that's going to depend the type of kids that you have riding.
Absolutely.
There's some families that it works out for them to drop their kid off at school, but it certainly doesn't work for and then those dynamics are going to change on a yearly basis as far as that. And so it's kind of hard to tell. Also, I think it was Amy, that asked me about, perhaps just using a van. My one, I guess my take so far looking at potential applicants and talking to people, I don't think it's the CDL part that is ultimately why we're not having applicants. I think it's the daily commitment to something that I don't know that you could pay enough, I guess. I'm not saying it can be fixed with pay. I don't even know that that's the case. Perhaps some level of pay would fix it, but way more than what's really in the budget. I just don't know that it's a hard job to do, especially if you're talking afternoon and morning. It's a hard job to break up your day. There's a few positions, maybe if you were like a teacher or an aide at the school, that might work okay with your day. perhaps if you're, you know, a small farmer or maybe if you have another job like that, where that interruption in your day isn't that big a deal. But it's just hard to find people that don't want to do it, regardless of the CDL. The CDL, I mean, we would offer training. We've done some of that. I've talked to people. Had another person that I thought was lined up, but it just didn't fall through, not consistent enough. So I don't know. I wish I had a good solution to it.
Like the schedule wasn't consistent enough or the.
Like they weren't consistent enough to, and didn't maybe follow through. So, not the schedule.
I really feel like we need to kind of, there's too many things running together right here.
There's a lot.
And too many of them can change over time. I mean, just between semesters, but even more between years. And I don't know how, but I don't know. I mean, for me, these sheets are the main focus.
Yep.
Seat hours are the main focus. And, you know, like 30 minutes less. I mean, I don't even want to look at that. It's just too much, you know? And I don't see any support for lengthening the school year in the parent deal. So,
You know, one thing to consider, you know, I do think academically there is room in the elementary to reduce something like 30 minutes by not just saying we're not going to take 30 minutes of math and science out, but perhaps, you know, we could find some time in there, like cut some recess or lunch or something. And those are times when teachers aren't necessarily on duty anyways. I know recess is important, but I think, you know, if you talk to parents, like being home at a decent time is important too. And we're kind of, those are competing interests. So I know recess wise, I mean, I'm a big fan of recess. I believe there's a lot of schools that have just completely taken it away, sacrificing it for seat time. And I think that hurts kids. But also if it's, you know, we have more recess probably than any other school district around. Some other school districts just run less days for the elementary overall. That way they can tie up, you know, still keep the times with their high schools, but they just run less days. In the high school, there's no doubt about it, looking at the numbers, that a 30-minute reduction or even a 20-minute reduction is going to have to add, either with a 20, you're going to have to add a few days for cushion at a minimum. And with a 30-minute reduction, you're going to have to add days just to meet the state minimum requirements.
How long are the recesses? Like, 15 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon, or?
So they have two 15-minute recesses. So that's a half hour that they lose. And then their lunch period runs from, overall, that counts lunch and recess, from 11 o'clock to, Jackie, what time do they get done? 11:50 now? And Jackie might disagree with me.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, internet's kind of going in and out because of my weather. I'd never calculated for that when I came home. They have 15 minutes in the morning, 15 in the afternoon. The younger kids go to lunch at 11, but the last group is 11:15, and they all come in at noon. Last year, we bumped that down to 11:50, but with the extra COVID activities, they just needed a little more time, so we bumped it back to the original coming in at noon. But that can be played with either way.
Yeah.
Next year.
So we're start time is 8 now?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock to
3:10.
3:10.
And if we took 10 minutes, just be 8 to 3 or 8:10 to 3:10.
Yeah.
Well,
You have to vote on this again. on the start time? The schedule?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you could approve this amended calendar as of now. I don't think you have to change the start time yet. There's the potential if you do make a change to the start and end time that we're gonna have to go back to the calendar to make adjustments or not. I mean, I don't know, just depends.
It's not due to the state
Right.
until May.
Right.
Okay.
And even then,
Agree
there's
with
an,
the August to June, like our weather is not very good in June, and so, I mean, if we were gonna add a couple things, it definitely say June
Yep.
instead of August,
Yep.
but it also, I mean, even in most, a lot of us are farmers, so that's like the only time that you can go on a vacation.
Right.
Too, so.
is June.
that is June.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And so then that makes it hard too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think. we're ready. to
Yeah,
make a
okay.
decision about
Yeah,
schedule,
it's
but
just-
that's just my opinion.
Well, I'm not gonna make a decision. You guys have to make a decision. If no one's ready to make a decision, you want to think about this, that is fine with me. We do need to, I think we need to approve the calendar.
Yeah.
This meeting.
Doesn't have to
We don't
happen.
have to,
It doesn't
so it's
have
not
to.
due till May.
Yeah,
We don't even have to approve the calendar this
No.
meeting?
we're ahead of the game
Okay.
for now. I mean, if you wanted to get something in paper, you could, but
Well, this whole bus thing.
I think that's where it's tricky. I mean, like, my kids, I mean, I stopped sending them to school in the morning, and it was because they had to get on the bus at 7. So like,
right.
I get it.
Yeah.
I used to ride the bus for 45 minutes in the morning, and that was forever. I can't imagine.
Yeah, so I can't imagine what your kids are doing. I mean, yeah, so
Yep.
Well, I mean, just like you said, even just having them on the bus for that long is hard. So.
I rode my bike in junior high every single day because I hated the bus so bad.
I did too.
And
I did too.
I
I
rode like
walked.
3.5
Yeah,
miles each
so-
way, you know, it's worth it, just not to have to get on that bus.
Yeah.
I get it is difficult for the kids because there's a bus driver and there's no supervision really.
Yeah.
She needs to focus or he needs to focus on the road and they do their best, you know, but there's little kids.
You've got
that
crowd
don't have a
control,
lot
plus
of
driving a bus, yeah.
Direction, you know, for a long time.
That's a good point.
Well, I think that yeah, we need to do what we can to get the bus routes straight, you know, what we can. I don't know what we can do, but it's been difficult to hire people.
There's someone out there that just loves driving buses, and that's what they.
I mean, there are certainly ideas which we've never formalized when it comes back to bus drivers about some financial benefit. You know, other districts have, you know, a signing bonus or, you know, if you serve the first year or maybe 2 years, you know, each year at the end of the year, there's a specific bonus for a bus driver that's above and beyond. I guess one of the challenges, do you just do that for new people who sign up, or then are you going to incorporate that bonus into, you know, the other, we could look at pay. I mean, Marcy and I could, you know, take a look at that. And you could look at, you know, somehow I'd like to find somebody that maybe you could make full-time in some other way. Like I said, sometimes like an aide or a teacher would be a benefit that way, because we offer, you know, insurance benefits. Larger districts where you might have a bus driver that you can just keep employed during the whole day, those bus drivers do get benefits.
I mean, it would be so much more useful to go that route, try to figure something out like that than messing around with the minutes here. And
Right.
Bus driver shortage though is not
It's not,
just
yeah.
to the schools
Yeah.
nationwide.
I mean, I share, your Fino School District is struggling. I know Harlow's has a hard time finding,
Same problem.
finding people for their routes. I mean, it certainly is yeah,
It's just the worst schedule.
it's
ever.
really,
I
it's
mean,
hard
like,
to, yeah,
tied up in the morning, tied up in the afternoon.
yeah.
So I wonder if there's any way you could like split that. Like have drivers who just do it in the morning. You know, just do it in the afternoon.
I'd be willing to
I
do
don't know,
that,
or,
yeah.
Like maybe they could do some sort of a flex schedule, you know, like, well, this week days, these are when you.
Yeah, and that's hard. I do think there might be some farmers out there, but it's like when you're talking about August 31st to start driving a route, it's like, no, no, thank you. I can't. I'll start in, mid-October for you
Yeah.
or late October for you. And then you need to let me off in February or end of February. Maybe then, but so that makes it a little hard too.
Okay, so what I hear us, the board saying is that we want to think about this for a month. Is there any data or information that you want Mr. Teeks to get for us in the next month that you can think of now? I mean, thank you for what you've done here, but is there anything else you need?
Yeah.
Information wise, if something comes up, we can ask for that, but I'm just asking if anybody has anything in their mind right now.
I mean, I guess if somebody comes up with something really creative.
I mean, another thing to consider, and I haven't even explored this, but I've thought about it, is like, you could bump the distance that we would bus to kind of maybe, and this wouldn't be Amy sitting here, but there'd be a whole new set of parents if you said, we're going to go this radius, and outside of this radius, we'll bus. I believe we have that right now. I don't know what it is, a mile from the, safety busing. Right,
A
Derek.
bus stop.
Yes, or another thing is, and this is a financial thing, and other districts have done this, is to pay, not a parent to transport other students, but to pay a parent to transport their student perhaps to a more straight line location. So then the district just enters into a contract with that parent to get them to somewhere that's going to save you from going out and then back in. Could be an option to shorten a bus
Is
route.
it just because we're rural, so we have those rural routes that they have to be picked up with their houses? Is that the law there?
I have to research that,
Yeah.
but I think that if you start not picking them up and you're running into it, you'd have to reimburse them.
You'd have to pay them.
In lieu of transportation.
Yeah.
So
So you could do something like, say, now we're going to go a 5 mile radius. You're not going to, but then we'd be reimbursing those people in that 5 mile radius to drop.
I
their-
mean, theoretically, if you had, a route with 3 2-mile runs off the road, off from the same point, you could cut a half an hour off of the route by just having something like that and paying. It would save, it'd probably save money really, but it would definitely.
The hard part too is even if it's not a financial thing, if a parent just says, I can't do that.
Yeah, well. The kids are really got strong legs walking. Just kidding, Amy. Okay, so.
We could also invest in moving the Upmore Stillman Ranch just a little closer. I don't know if that's.
To be fair, I mean, we live a long ways away.
Right.
and We choose to live there and. we
You aren't the only
recognize-
ones out there though. either.
Yeah.
Well, but
Yep.
we recognize we're gonna have a long bus ride. I mean, and I grew up with an hour and I think an hour is reasonable, but
Yep.
you know how I feel, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna take some time on the bus to get us to school.
Okay, so if you can, I guess work on the bus side of things and then we can revisit the 10 or 20 minutes next time.
Okay.
All right, thank you for everybody's contribution to that. Now, if there's no objection, we're gonna move on to a brief look at our school operations plan, just because we have to do that every meeting, it seems
Yeah.
like. Is there anything in here?
No changes. Just wanted to, I realize, I just want to make the board aware. I think I generally get a sense that things are shifting and everybody wants everything like wide open again. I'm hesitant and I just want to be very careful. I think it's much easier to just kind of be wise in my opinion. as we do this, as opposed to just like, oh, everything's returning back to normal. Certainly in all the conversations that we have with the health district, cases are dropping drastically is what I would say. It's just kind of falling right off. I mean, Carol explained to me last week, like, there were a few weeks where we were like, in our region, like it was like, oh, another 1,000 cases, another 1,000 cases, another 1,000 cases. Now it's been 8 weeks since they've had 1,000. I mean, so it's really dropped off very rapidly in our region. And I know there are some districts that are already talking about just kind of removing all the mask mandates, all the distancing mandates. One thing that I would say is that, it still just takes one case in the school. And if we're not wearing masks and following the distancing protocols, the health district is still going to recommend that all of those kids quarantine. We have a pretty good setup right now with our masking and distancing rules that when we've had a couple of student cases, we haven't been required to quarantine. And we have also not seen any spread from those cases that came into our building. We had our moment kind of right before Christmas. Since that point, we've had just one staff case and one student case. Neither one has led to any spread. And so my general suggestion is that we just stay the course with this and try to make it. My other big picture take is that with the vaccine rolling out, and I don't plan to wear a mask for the rest of my life, but with the vaccine rolling out, I think it's only fair to give people who want to get the vaccine, I'm not talking anything about forced vaccine, but people who want to get the vaccine should have an opportunity to get it before we just kind of open things up. One of the big goals for our school was to prevent, it was not only to protect our students, but also to protect our staff. And they're in the vaccination process. And then also the community who is not in the vaccination process yet. And so my thinking is that, if everybody who's out there has had a chance to get the vaccine, if they want it, then I think we're in a different situation than where we are still right now. So my recommendation is that we just kind of stay the course. I think we're doing good things and preventing the spread at this point, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right.
Do you
Yep.
think we'll switch from yellow category to green?
Yeah,
Is that one-
I had considered switching from yellow to green, and I visited with Carol about this specifically, and spent maybe a half hour talking to her because, so they moved Lewis County back into green in terms of that their rankings, and basically all of the counties except for one now are back into green. After visiting with Carol, I mean, I could have proposed to change the rules, but keep the masking when you can't social distance in place, and just said, well, we're just going to shift that to green, but now we're going to call ourselves green and keep that. I decided not to do that because I thought that was just kind of, just picking a color, but we'd still keep that. I think it's important to keep the masking when you can't social distance. And my argument for that is, one, I didn't make this up because I thought it would be a fun way to spend a year, right? But I think it makes a difference in the spread. And the public health district tells me it makes a difference in the spread. And ultimately, if our goal is to keep kids in school this year, and right now, if we know that they have a case come in and people aren't wearing masks or social distancing, that they're going to have to spend it next 2 weeks at home. And if we are doing those things, that we can continue to operate as a school, I believe that that's worth it to just stay. Now, as far as yellow versus green, I mean, we are much less risk now than we were when I got sick in December, just because it's surely a numbers game. There's not as many cases. But for now, I still think the best thing for our school would be to keep that so we're not sending kids home. But that could be an option, is just to shift to green. And I know there are some districts that are going to do it. Right, at least I think they will.
successful. It can just see how the couple weeks go.
Yeah.
And then,
Next meeting, am I like, oh, yeah,
and then if it-
We're all the way back probably on a case rate of where we were probably right as school was beginning. So we're right about there, which we were in green then at that point. But I think give it another month and see what March looks like. You can,
A little bit of caution seems more in line with the trends, even though it's dropping off everywhere trend wise. Everyone's being a little cautious just in kind of in case, like some of these more transmissible versions become, spread around. I don't know.
you know,
Thank God, I don't know. Anyway, I think, the points of protecting our staff, protecting community members, vulnerable community members, because, kids, they could, overall, they're just fine, but I think we have a obligation to our staff. And how is the vaccination of our staff coming? I thought it was done.
so, well, because it's a 2-series shot,
Oh,
so we're just starting now this week and next on the second part of the Moderna vaccine. And then it'll be 2 weeks after that before they say you get that 96% efficacy on the vaccine.
Are you
So-
at liberty to say, or do you know about how percentage?
Yeah, I think I could say, I would guess 2/3, 67% or so of our staff have elected to be vaccinated. And yeah,
So will you get the second, like, do you have to get the second shot, or did they consider your first shot your second shot?
it's a good question. Like for me, yeah. So I read the Israeli study about that, and they're saying that people who had it, I'm actually kind of nervous for the second shot, and I haven't visited with my healthcare provider specifically about it. But there was an Israeli study that said, people who got sick, got the first shot, and then got the second shot had pretty, well, I wouldn't call it severe like having COVID, but had pretty hard symptoms coming from that. And so Israel was recommending kind of, if you've had it, don't get the second shot. The first is enough of a booster. So I don't know yet. So far, the CDC or FDA hasn't made any sort of stance on that. And some of it is because all the science is they just looked at people who got 2 shots because they were doing it so quick, and they didn't look at, whether or not someone had it. So they don't know for sure, but I don't know.
Everybody's saying the second shot is like you can plan on just not feeling very good.
Yeah. And I had some symptoms after the first. It didn't last. It lasted less than 24 hours, but I had aches.
Thank you. Okay. And attendance. Oh boy, I get to go to 2 games. It was so much fun. Would you like to report on fan attendance?
Yeah. So just continued. We've now, I think overall there's been like 4 changes just during basketball season. We had a plan before basketball season. It changed right as basketball season was starting. We adjusted. It changed now. So we're at 40% attendance. We're basically through it. We've got one more home game. That's an indoor home game. Then we switch to the outdoor spring sports, or else other people's venues, so they have to worry about it. I just think it's been very positive. I want to publicly give a shout out to our community. Going back to the masks again, everybody, I think I've never talked to anyone who says they like to wear a mask, but our community has been outstanding, I think, at following this rule and doing what they need to do to have students playing. And so I just want to give kudos to the parents and everybody who came. It really, they never made it an issue, and it was always about kids. So great place to be.
Good. Next item, anybody have a comment or question about fan attendance? Vandals have a game at 7 against Eastern.
Are they going to let people in? Or
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
cool.
I don't know how many, but
Yeah.
I think think something like,
40%?
Yeah, 40% of capacity.
it's just slightly under their average attendance
Yeah.
last year.
That's what we did quickly find that. We kind of set up some rules to make sure parents could get in, and really at our 40% number, it was, we haven't come
Yeah.
close to it. So,
That's good. Kind of.
Yeah.
So next item is appoint negotiations team. Last year, I think it was Polly and Carrie. And a stellar job you did do. And so anyway, we need to appoint 2 people. I guess would be best to have volunteers. So anybody would like?
Do it again? Yeah, we'll do it again.
Oh,
no.
surprise, but thank you very much. Sandy, did you hear that? And I just want, you weren't trying to volunteer right when they
No
were.
way.
Okay, good. Let's make sure. Thank you very much. So Polly and Carrie will be our post negotiations team, and whenever we get around to get a date to begin that process. Okay, we're ready for reports. K-12 principal, Mrs. Mossman. I don't know.
Always takes a minute to get the mute button off. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm a little delayed here, so I see and hear things at odd times. Okay, for the principal's report, the winter concerts went very well with the 8th grade drama doing a presentation at intermission. I received an email from the State Department today asking for music teachers to please send them video clips of concerts that they can play at the Rotunda during March Music Month. So Joe's looking into doing that. He said it would be pretty easy to do. And I think ours is going to be a little different than most bands, and some aren't even having bands. So I think it'll be an interesting thing for us to participate in. Our homework center has a few new parameters. We have added that a student doesn't have to be failing a class. We want to catch them before, where teachers are having issues with just a few students not getting their weekly work turned in. And when that happens, it's really difficult for them to, understand continued progress in that class. And so we have invited them to just come and have a place to stay 3 times a week or more if they wish to, just to get their homework done and caught up, and so that they can keep up in class. This kind of hopefully will avoid digging out of a bigger hole later in the semester. Semester celebration was a lot of fun. I think it was the warmest day we've had all year. It was January 29th. We had patio warmers all put together and ready for the kids, and we used them, but we didn't have to. The kids use them now for their high school break after lunch for about 15 minutes when they continue to play ping pong. I think we're getting some pretty good ping pong players. We had pizza. Jenny helped us cook 22 Papa Murphy's pizzas, which was a lot, but we fed about 68, 69 students. They played some different games in their classrooms and watched movies and just had a few hours to just kind of enjoy each other and celebrate that, yes, we made it through a COVID-filled semester, still here. Staff events, there are 11 staff that completed and received credit for the remote teaching course. And that went really well. Everyone shared in the last day, and it was a really good place for me to take some notes on some professional development. I was pretty impressed with what our teachers have done. Even though we didn't have to use it too much, we do have sometimes when students have to be home, and we're able to use some of those resources that they've built. 23 staff members will be involved in the professional book study with Dr. Brinkerhoff on trauma-informed practices. There are 4 different books, and even 3 of our aides are involved. And so I think I'm really excited to see how this happens to go together, because it's all being done virtually. We're getting pretty used to this format. Christy will be meeting with us as part of our PLC day this Friday. And different groups will meet individually. In Zoom, there's a breakout room. I haven't used it yet, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. I'm not sure I shared that Joe Campbell received a CapEd grant for $750 yet to purchase the keyboards. He has them already. Formal evaluations have begun. This is, I spent about an hour in a teacher's classroom, and then it's some conferences and lots of writing up when they're finished. And I just share that with them before it's finalized, because we can't finalize them until our ISATs are completed in April. The high school ASB Coffee Corner is going through the end of February, and a couple coffee corners ago, I was asked by a junior high student if they could play their guitar. So it's been kind of a live entertainment coffee corner for 20 minutes on Friday morning. And I think we're up to about $300 that we have made so far, minus a few expenses. Our virtual knowledge bowl that was supposed to happen tonight was canceled. We had some schools that did not have school today due to some snow in pockets that happened. But so far, out of 6 teams, Nez Perce is ranked #1. For sports, the girls basketball, boys basketball, it's nice to see more fans there. I know the kids play differently when there's people yelling for them. And I do have to reiterate the thanks to the community for wearing the mask. Being the mask police isn't not a fun job, but it's one we want to keep our community safe, and we want to follow the governor's orders, but mainly we want our kids to play. And so that's what we try to install in our people that come as visitors. Junior high volleyball has begun. They have a game actually tomorrow before the boys play tomorrow night. It's a lot of fun to watch them. Caitlin is doing a great job. As far as clubs and CTE, junior high math counts participated in their test. There were 6 students. They competed in the morning, and then they had pizza in the afternoon, or right after that, before lunch. There was Austin Nelson, who competed in the FFA North Idaho LDE competition. He can say the word better than me. It's at expertament, the speaking part. Somebody could fill that in. Girls Club started the Candy Grams today. That's always popular. The little kids come to the window so they don't come into the building to buy their candy this year. In the elementary, the ASB has decided they want to teach the younger kids traditional recess games. They're afraid that they're going to forget them because they're not playing together as much as they used to. So they are masked up, and they are teaching the younger kids different recess games. It's kind of fun to watch. And they are preparing, they've prepared a pledge for their walk and runathon thing they're doing this spring. We thought we could start maybe in February, but looking out the window, I think we're going to be off to waiting some more. But they're ready to go when the weather is. As far as the junior, senior high school, we have a KORT radio station out of Grangeville that asks us to send 2 high school names of students who are nominated by their high school teachers for Students of the Month. And we focus on some of our core values that the students are showing through their behavior and just different things they do for the school. And the 2 for this last month is Caden Horton and Grace Tiggs. You can listen to them on Big Country News. They'll advertise it for the month. Steve Button was here from Lewiston. He's a social worker and crisis team leader in Lewiston. He spent several years working as a social worker in Lewiston. And I know some of us have had trainings under Steve Button. He came and presented to 2 groups, freshmen and sophomore, and then seniors and juniors, about suicide and suicide prevention. It was also part of Hannah Duke's senior presentation. So you'll have to check that out in May when she's all set up. She's done a really good job. The Mascot Student Committee, we have 3 ASB members that have met with Mr. Tiggs looking at art and graphics that we are considering for our mascot. And the Senior Citizen Coin Drive this year, the students in the ASB decided to keep it local. And when I spoke to somebody involved in the senior center, they said we're having trouble financially. So the kids want to help. So they are going to start a coin drive just to kind of help them with some
some basic expenses so they can hopefully make it through before they, so they can meet again in the future. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions? I have a couple questions.
Sure.
One, how is the coin drive going to work? I mean, do I bring
I'm sorry.
do I bring money to the school, or are they going to come around and how's it going to work?
They're going to run them through their classes, and they're going to have one in the office. And I'm assuming that I need to have the president talk to Sandy, and perhaps maybe they can work with the store somewhat. I'll have to see. I want her to ask Sandy though, and see if that works. And then we'll run it through the machines and get it all counted up. So I think if we had one at the store, that would really help people in the community see what the kids are doing. It's hard to get into the school.
Well, I think a lot of people are like me. They've got coin jars on their dryer or wherever.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other question I had was, are the concerts or the drama thing on the Facebook page, or are they available anywhere?
Yeah, they're linked. You might have to go
Yes.
back to posts
They're
now.
on Facebook.
But, well, they're technically on YouTube, but the link is on Facebook.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So it'll be about late January, excuse me, for high school and junior high. Elementary was in December.
Thank you. Any more? Nope. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Thank you.
We're ready for the superintendent's report.
Okay. So just noting a couple, and then just if you guys had any questions, a couple of bills out there. There's the S-1046, I guess, is by the chairman of the Senate Education Committee, Chairman Thane. Innovative classrooms. I have, although it likely won't impact us, there's definitely some concerns with that bill. What it basically says is if parents can pot up a group of 24 kids to make a classroom, and so this would probably be in a larger district, that they can basically select the curriculum
Essentially
That's
create a
taught
charter school
in-
within our.
and force the public school to be like have a little charter with whatever their particular issue is. It might be that they believe that kids need to learn more about frogs, or everything should be frogs in the classroom, or it's just I guess the idea is to create these innovative classrooms where people have ideas. The impact on trying to manage, I can't imagine in a larger district where you have like, this is the certain parents' classroom now because we've got the 24 kids in there.
Also, you can become a school board of every classroom but that one.
Correct. Yeah, and then you lose authority over that classroom because the parents have decided what the curriculum will be. So that's that one. The levy disclosure bill, House Bill 66. Some concerns about that. I understand what their intention is. So a few years ago, it was limited what you can say when you run a levy. That it has to speak specifically. It's very constricted about the levy. What was happening was districts were following that rule, what is still happening. And when a levy is coming off the books, they have a right still to write that in. So you might say, we're proposing this levy and here's going to be the mill rate. But also, just so you're aware as a voter, this levy is coming off and here is what you were paying. That they're proposing taking that second part, or not allowing the second part of that language. And their argument is that the second part of the language confuses things. I would argue strongly that the second part doesn't confuse things. And if anything, not having a piece about a levy that's coming off actually confuses things even more and leaves voters with the impression that potentially this is just, we're going to tack on to what you're already paying. So I know the School Boards Association has taken a strong stance on that bill. There's also a levy one now that's looking to eliminate the August levy election date. That really ultimately, August is a big emergency election date. That means if your levy failed in the spring, you're trying to run something just so you can start the brand new school year without firing more people. That's the primary purpose of that August levy date. And to not have it means that if you fail that one in the spring, those books are cooked, or whatever you want to, I mean, that goose is cooked. Is that it? It's done. And there's no adjustment that you can make until the following November, actually, would be the next.
It doesn't do you good because you can only levy the tax the first Friday in September. So you would have to wait.
Yes.
Justification for that.
You know, they've been working hard. You're unmuted, Jackie, just so you know. I think they've been working hard. Originally, you know, a long time ago, you could run a levy whenever you wanted on school carnival day. It's been restricted to just the 4 dates. And now I think there's just continued pressure to.
There's a wide belief in the legislature that schools overtax people, and that this is the way to not overtax them. By taking away election dates as a way to restrict taxation. And anyway, at the GAC meeting that's the Government Affairs Committee for School Board on Friday, I proposed an ideal solution to this, and everyone agreed with me that we would totally give up the August 27th date if the legislature agreed to fully fund schools constitutionally as they should. And everyone agreed. So
there you go.
Go ahead.
The H65 just kind of caught my attention. It's kind of a pet bill by one representative that would basically make if any school or city or any other smaller governmental agency decided to remove a monument or potentially a name of something or anything that the legislature deemed to be of historical value, you would have to go to the legislature and have them approve that decision. So really kind of an affront to sort of a local control by an elected board to make a decision about something. There's H68 with school closures and infectious diseases. This actually would take away any authority that the public health district has to close a school. So it's always, well, not always, for as long as these health districts have been around, they've been able to come in and close the school. And they could close it for a flu outbreak. They could close it for a chicken pox or mumps or measles outbreak. This would strip the public health district all of that authority and would lay basically the sole authority for school closures just on the school board itself. And there's also an interesting one. This is also by Thane about a kind of a career technical education diploma, which is interesting. It was one of the things when they came up with that STEM diploma a few years ago, there was this warning it was going to become like the license plate thing. And I'm afraid we're heading down that path of everybody's going to have their own, you know, you might have a arts diploma and a CTE diploma, and certainly we want to recognize kids for doing things in certain areas and going above and beyond. Our kids at this point likely wouldn't, because it would require a pathway. And right now we do have one ag pathway. So I guess there may be some ag kids that fall into that category of agriculture. Just wanted to, any other legislative, or you'll have board time too, if you want to report anything else from your GAC. Just want to make sure you know that I continue to track attendance. Our attendance remains at an extremely high level, really. Like we've got better attendance than we've ever had. Monitored daily. We continue to ask for symptoms of illness, and just like our general region, we're seeing a large decrease in any sort of COVID activity. Events and activities, high school track, baseball, and softball start before the next board meeting. So that's February 26th. We'll have kids outside if it's not, inches of snow. ASB, I decided to go ahead and approve them to move forward with prom planning. I do think even as you're looking at Jackie's principal report, I found myself thinking like, oh my goodness, that is almost normal. Like other than some kids with some masks on, like we are returning, things are getting better. So we'll move forward with prom. They know that masks are going to be required at this point, and they're just planning ahead. I think Jackie was saying that they're planning maybe to make it like a masquerade or something to have fun. I'm sure there'll be, we won't make kids dance 6 feet apart, but with masks, we'll just, and it's maybe time to return to more normal. Although you could do line dancing like 6 feet apart, and as the daughter of a junior and freshman girl, I'm all for 6 feet apart dancing. The regular monitoring, I just checked again, at the beginning of every month, including now February. It's cool with this iSIP or iStation reading test that we do. I can look at that data. And I can tell you, I'm super impressed throughout the year with just the great growth line that we get in that K through 3 group, that K through 3 group of teachers. We're also doing monthly monitoring using the iStation product for mathematics as well. And again, seeing that growth. Our teachers are giving some, we don't overdo it, I think, with these ISAT interim assessments, but it has been a couple of years since the kids have taken the ISAT. So I've encouraged the teachers to at least get in. The interim assessments are shorter, 10 to 20 minute assessments on one specific topic that's assessed on the ISAT. But even more valuable, it gives them a chance to get into the system and realize how it works, how you can highlight items, and when you can use a calculator and when you can't. Certainly, we're not trying to just prep specifically for the test, but in anything you do in life, if you know what's coming, it's going to be beneficial, and what the rules of the game are. I think I just forgot to take that off from my last month's notes, the building inspection. Nothing new there, other than, again, if you want to fire the tech director, he left some stuff out. Yeah, it's been resolved, but that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions or comments on the report? Okay.
What are your guesses for
I think we're on a path right now without making any promises that we can have a basically normal full graduation. Assuming that we don't see another spike in cases or the new variant or those kind of things, I do think we're on a path. Like even when people talk to me about masks, it might include masks still at graduation, but people-wise, I think it can be a full normal graduation.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go all the way back up here. I think we're at a point for to entertain a motion for executive session.
I'd like to go into executive session. Polly?
Okay, you want to include the numbers there?
Number 7.-2/6. 1.
Thank you.
Carrie will second it.
Carrie seconded. Thank
Thanks,
you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Let's vote then. We have to voice vote. Polly?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes. Sandy?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.